What this gray being showed me inside the Great Pyramid will shatter everything you think you know about ancient Egypt. Before this story ends, you'll understand why pyramids were never tombs, how the Anunnaki encoded activation technology into stone, and why your DNA carries dormant codes that Giza can still unlock even today, even damaged, even after 4,500 years. If you're ready to discover the true purpose of the pyramids, why archaeologists have been deliberately misled, and what happens to your body when you stand inside the king's chamber, subscribe to Stories of Light and activate the bell. Because what happened to Dr. Elena Marquez in Cairo will prove that the greatest mystery on Earth isn't ancient history, it's your forgotten potential. Now, let me tell you how a woman who dedicated 25 years to studying Egypt finally learned the truth, not from books, but from a being who watched the pyramids being built. Dr. Elena Marquez was 47 years old and absolutely convinced that her entire career had been a carefully constructed lie. Not her lie, academia's lie. The institutional, peer-reviewed, textbook-published lie that pyramids were tombs built by slaves using copper tools and wooden ramps. 25 years of digging, measuring, translating hieroglyphs, and she'd never found a single piece of evidence supporting the official narrative. No mummies in the major pyramids, no burial inscriptions, no tools capable of cutting granite with millimeter precision. Just beautiful, elaborate, mathematically impossible structures that nobody could explain. She'd published 3 papers questioning the tomb theory. The first was ignored. The second was ridiculed. The third cost her tenure at the University of Barcelona. At 42, she was forced to choose, conform or leave. She left. Now she worked as an independent consultant, living in a cramped apartment in Cairo's Zamalek district, taking odd jobs, translation work, site assessments for documentaries, anything to stay close to the pyramids she loved but couldn't understand. Tuesday night, late November. Cairo was finally cooling down after the brutal summer, the temperature dropping to a bearable 18 degrees Celsius. Elena sat at her desk, really just a folding table pressed against the window overlooking the Nile, staring at photographs she'd taken that morning at Giza. The king's chamber, the so-called burial chamber of Khufu. She'd been inside it hundreds of times over the years, but today she'd brought a frequency analyzer. Just curiosity, just a hunch. And what she'd measured had stopped her cold. 432 hertz. A constant, unwavering resonance frequency. The entire chamber vibrated at exactly 432 hertz. The same frequency that modern sound healers claimed was the universal healing frequency. The heartbeat of the earth. The natural tuning of the cosmos. Elena wasn't spiritual. She was scientific, methodical, data-driven. But this was measurable, undeniable. And when she'd checked her recordings from other sites, the Temple of Karnak, the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, they all showed variations of the same frequency. Someone had engineered these structures to resonate, deliberately, precisely. She pulled up her analysis software, overlaying the measurements with the pyramid's internal geometry. The angles, the dimensions, the material composition, everything contributed to maintaining that specific vibration. This wasn't architecture. This was acoustic engineering at a level that shouldn't have been possible 4,500 years ago. Elena rubbed her tired eyes. 3 hours of analysis, no dinner, coffee gone cold. Her ex-husband would have said she was obsessing again, that she needed to let go, move on, accept that some mysteries stay mysteries. But he was in Barcelona with someone younger, someone who didn't talk about pyramids at dinner parties, and Elena was here, alone, finally free to obsess without judgment. She saved her files, stood to stretch, and that's when she saw the light. Not from the street, not from neighboring buildings, from inside her apartment,
behind her, in the corner near the bookshelf. Blue, pale pulsing blue, like bioluminescence, growing brighter. Elena turned slowly, her archaeologist's mind trying to classify what she was seeing. Electrical fire? Gas leak ignition? Hallucination from lack of food? But the light was too controlled, too purposeful, and there was form within it, materializing, building itself from nothing, or from something she couldn't see, into something she absolutely could see. Tall, maybe 2 meters, thin, almost fragile-looking, smooth gray skin with a faint sheen like polished stone, head proportionally large, oval-shaped, eyes enormous, pure black, no visible pupils but somehow expressive, somehow looking at her with what felt like recognition? Elena's first instinct wasn't to scream. It was to document. Her hand moved toward her phone automatically, the archaeologist's reflex. Photograph, panic later. That won't work, a voice said, not in sound, but directly in her mind. Clear Spanish, her native language, though she'd been thinking in English moments before. The technology won't function properly near my field, but you don't need photographic proof. What you need is experiential proof. What you measured today, the 432 Hertz, you're asking the right questions. Now you deserve the right answers. Elena's hand froze halfway to her phone. Her heart was hammering, but her mind was oddly clear. Cataloging details, no visible mouth movement, telepathic communication confirmed, temperature in room unchanged, no ozone smell despite bright light. Who? She started, then corrected, her scientific training kicking in, even in impossibility. What are you? An observer, the being replied, and Elena noticed the telepathic communication carried not just words, but meaning, context, emotion, a bandwidth of information far greater than speech. Ready to know what? Elena asked, her voice steadier than she felt. That you were right, that your career was destroyed for telling the truth, that pyramids are not tombs. They are technology, activation chambers, built by the Anunnaki to unlock dormant human potential encoded in DNA. And I can show you, not just tell you, but show you. Take you there not just spatially, but temporally. You'll see Giza when it was new, when it functioned at full capacity, when pharaohs underwent transformation that your academics call mythology, but was actually biology. Elena's mind was racing. Every instinct screamed this was impossible. But the frequency data was real, the architectural precision was real, and something deep in her, something that had driven her to study Egypt since she was 12 years old, recognized truth when it heard it, even delivered by an impossible being in her Cairo apartment. "Show me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Show me everything."
The being nodded, a surprisingly human gesture, and said, "Before I show you the pyramids as they were, you need to understand why you, specifically, are ready for this knowledge. Your path to this moment was not random." Elena felt a strange sensation, like memory surfacing, but clearer, more objective, as if she were watching her own life from outside. She saw herself at 12 years old in Madrid, checking out every book on Egypt from the library. Her parents didn't understand the obsession. They were practical people, her father a mechanic, her mother a nurse. But Elena had recurring dreams of golden sand, massive structures, a life that felt more real than her waking one. "You've been there before," the being said, "in other lives. You were a scribe in Thebes 3,200 years ago. You recorded rituals you didn't fully understand. The frustration you felt then, studying mysteries without comprehension, echoes in this life. You chose to return, to finish what you started." Elena wanted to dismiss this as pseudoscience, but the feeling of recognition was overwhelming. It explained the inexplicable pull, the obsession that had defined her entire adult life. The memory vision continued. University of Barcelona, age 22. undergraduate thesis already focused on pyramid construction anomalies. Her advisor warned her, "This path leads nowhere respectable. Stick to pottery shards and carbon dating. Leave the pyramids to the Egyptians." But she couldn't. She pursued a PhD at the American University in Cairo, spending 6 years analyzing pyramid blocks, quarry sites, tool marks. Her dissertation argued that the timeline was wrong, the labor estimates impossible, the tool technology insufficient. It was meticulously researched, mathematically sound, and academically unpublishable. "Revise your conclusions," her committee said, "or find another career." She revised, reluctantly, submitted a sanitized version that she didn't believe but that met academic standards. She got her doctorate and hated herself for compromising. The next 10 years, ages 28 to 38, were a careful dance. Elena worked excavations across Egypt, Saqqara, Luxor, Abu Simbel. She was skilled, respected, published regularly in journals, but always on safe topics, always avoiding the pyramids, always swallowing questions she wasn't allowed to ask. Then she married Diego, a Spanish architect working on restoration projects in Cairo. He was brilliant, charming, and utterly uninterested in ancient mysteries. "It's just stone, Elena. Very impressive stone, but still just stone. You're projecting meaning that isn't there." They tried for 5 years, but Elena's work consumed her. 14-hour days at dig sites, weekends at the Cairo Museum, evenings analyzing data. And Diego wanted a wife who came home, who wanted children, who could separate work from life. "You're more married to dead pharaohs than to me," he said during their final argument. Elena couldn't deny it. They divorced when she was 38. Friendly, sad, inevitable. And then came the papers. The 3 publications that destroyed everything. Paper 1, age 40. Acoustic Properties of the Great Pyramid. Evidence for Intentional Resonance Engineering. Published in a minor archaeological journal. Argued that the king's chamber was designed to amplify specific sound frequencies. Mostly ignored. A few dismissive comments. Interesting but speculative. Paper 2, age 42. Pyramids as Initiatory Technology, Re-examining the Tomb Hypothesis. Published in a more prestigious journal after 2 years of fighting with reviewers. Directly challenged the burial theory using statistical analysis of mummy discoveries, hieroglyphic evidence, and structural comparisons with known tombs. This one got attention, the wrong kind. Senior colleagues called it unscholarly. Conference invitations dried up. Paper 3, age 43. The Anunnaki Connection, Sumerian Influence on Pyramid Construction. This one never made it past peer review at legitimate journals. She published it independently online. Argued that technological parallels between Sumerian ziggurats and Egyptian pyramids suggested a common source, the Anunnaki, mentioned in both cultures' texts. The academic community crucified her. Pseudo-archaeology, ancient aliens nonsense, career suicide. The University of Barcelona, where she'd finally secured tenure, gave her a choice: retract the paper and apologize publicly, or resign. She resigned. The being showed Elena this memory, her final day at the university, packing her office. A colleague she'd thought was a friend stopped by. "Elena, why are you doing this? You had everything: tenure, respect, a future, and you threw it away for conspiracy theories." "Because they're not theories," Elena replied, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "Because something happened at Giza that we don't understand, and pretending we do is worse than admitting ignorance. Because I can't spend my life lying to students." "Then you're a fool," the colleague said, and walked away. That was 4 years ago. Since then, Elena had survived on the margins. Freelance work, paid far less than her university salary, translation jobs, hieroglyphics for documentary producers who'd mispronounce every god's name, site assessments for wealthy tourists. She'd burned through her savings. Her apartment was cheap in a neighborhood where tourists didn't go. Her social life was non-existent. Her academic friends had abandoned her, and she'd never been good at casual relationships. But she had freedom. Freedom to investigate. Freedom to question. Freedom to spend every available hour at Giza, measuring, recording, analyzing, and loneliness. God, the loneliness. At 47, living alone in a foreign city, professionally blacklisted, personally isolated, some morning she woke up questioning everything. Was she crazy? Had she destroyed her life over nothing? Were the pyramids really just tombs, and was I the delusional one? But then she'd take her equipment to the king's chamber, measure the 432 Hz frequency, feel the vibration in her bones, and know, absolutely know, that there was more here than academia admitted. The being's voice pulled her back to the present. You lost everything for truth. Career, marriage, reputation, security. Most humans aren't willing to pay that price. They conform, compromising truth for comfort. But you didn't. You couldn't. That's why you're ready. That's why I'm here. Because integrity, even when it costs everything, is the qualification for real knowledge. Elena felt tears, not of sadness but of validation. 25 years of doubt, of wondering if she was wrong, if she was crazy. And now this impossible being confirming what she'd always sensed but couldn't prove. The pyramids, the being continued, were built by the Anunnaki 12,800 years ago, though your archaeologists place construction at 4,500 years ago. Dynasties came later, claimed ownership, but didn't build. They inherited, maintained, eventually forgot the true purpose. And that purpose was activation of human DNA, human consciousness, human potential that's been dormant since the Anunnaki left. You're about to see how it worked. Not theory, but direct experience. Ready? Elena nodded, her scientist's skepticism battling with her archaeologist's intuition. But she'd come too far, lost too much to turn back now. She said, "Show me Giza as it was. Show me the truth."
The being touched Elena's forehead with one long, cool finger. Reality dissolved. Not gradually, but instantly. Her apartment vanished, Cairo vanished, the 21st century vanished. And Elena was falling through time, consciousness untethered from body, hurtling backward through millennia. Images flashed. Modern Egypt, colonial Egypt, Ottoman Cairo, Mamluk dynasties, Islamic conquest, Byzantine era, Roman occupation, Ptolemaic period, late kingdom, middle kingdom, old kingdom, and then she stopped. Or rather, her consciousness stabilized in a moment 12,800 years before she was born. The Giza Plateau stretched before her, but transformed utterly. Where tourists now walked on sand, there were gardens. Lush, green, irrigated by an extensive canal system connected to the Nile, which ran closer to the plateau then, before thousands of years of silt deposits shifted its course. Palm trees, flowering plants, geometric pools reflecting sunlight, and people, hundreds of them, moving with purpose, organized, clearly working on something massive. But no slaves. Elena saw immediately no one in chains, no whips, no forced labor. Instead, she saw what looked like voluntary workers, well-fed, well-dressed, focused. And among them, others, taller, different. The Anunnaki. Elena's breath caught, though she wasn't breathing. This was consciousness projection, not physical presence. She was seeing them, actually seeing them. They were similar to the gray beside her, but taller, easily 2.5 meters, with golden-toned skin instead of gray, and eyes that weren't entirely black, but held color, like amber or topaz. They wore garments that looked like fabric, but moved strangely as if alive, adapting to body temperature and motion. They moved among humans naturally, directing, teaching, demonstrating. No worship, no divine ceremony. Just practical collaboration, like engineers on a construction site. And the pyramids. The pyramids. Elena had seen them thousands of times, but never like this. The Great Pyramid was under construction, nearly complete but not finished. And the exterior wasn't rough limestone blocks like modern times. It was covered with smooth, white, polished Tura limestone casing stones that fit together so perfectly she couldn't see joints even from a few meters away. The surface gleamed in the sun like a mirror, blindingly bright. And the capstone, the Ben, as it would later be called, Elena saw it being positioned, not with cranes or ramps, but with technology she couldn't name. A massive, perfectly geometric piece of stone. Was it stone? It looked metallic, golden, almost like pure gold, but something more. Floating through the air, suspended by visible energy fields that distorted light around them like heat shimmer. An Anunnaki stood below, holding a device, crystalline, glowing softly, and the capstone responded to it, moving with precise control, lowering into position. When it touched the pyramid's apex, Elena felt something, even through the temporal projection, a surge of energy, like an electrical circuit completing. The entire structure resonated, a deep, harmonic tone that she felt in her chest, in her skull, in her bones. 432 hertz, the frequency she'd measured, but at full intensity, not the faint echo that remained today. The being, her gray guide, narrated telepathically, "The capstone is the key. Not decorative, not symbolic, functional. It's a transducer, converting cosmic energy, what you might call background radiation from space, into usable frequency that channels through the entire pyramid structure. The casing stones amplify and focus it. The internal chambers direct it to specific nodes." Elena watched workers, humans, applying finishing touches to the casing stones, not chiseling, not grinding, polishing with something that looked like simple cloths, but the stones beneath gleamed with unnatural perfection. The Tura limestone was chosen not just for beauty, but for its crystalline structure. It's filled with tiny quartz crystals, fossilized ancient shells. Quartz amplifies electromagnetic energy. The entire pyramid became a massive resonator, converting cosmic frequencies into 432 hertz healing vibration. But why? Elena asked, her thought immediately received. Why build something so massive just to create a frequency? Not just frequency, transformation. Come, I'll show you. The projection shifted, time accelerating. Elena watched seasons pass in moments, construction completing, celebration, consecration, and then the pyramid in use. Night, a new moon, maximum darkness, the pyramid gleaming white under starlight, the capstone shining softly, not from reflected light, but from within, as if powered by something internal. And a procession, humans and Anunnaki together, walking along a causeway from the Nile temples to the pyramid's entrance. In the center of the group, a single human, a young man, perhaps 25, wearing simple white linen, expression calm but intense. An initiate, chosen not by birth but by character. He underwent 3 years of preparation, ethical training, physical conditioning, mental discipline. Now he enters for final activation. Elena followed the projection inside. The descending passage, the ascending passage, the grand gallery, all pristine, smooth, the same perfect casing stones lining every surface. And everywhere that resonance, 432 hertz. But so powerful, Elena felt it would have been overwhelming in physical form. They reached the king's chamber, not empty like today, configured for purpose. The granite sarcophagus, which Elena now understood wasn't a sarcophagus at all, but a resonance chamber, positioned precisely at the room's energy center. Around it, 7 Anunnaki stood in geometric formation, and human priests, already trained, already activated in previous cycles, forming an outer circle. The initiate entered, removed his garment, and laid down in the granite chamber. He was still, conscious, breathing slowly, his eyes open, fixed on the ceiling, the massive granite beams that Elena always found odd, structurally unnecessary for a burial chamber, but perfect for precise acoustic control. One Anunnaki placed his hands above the granite chamber, not touching, but hovering centimeters above. Energy flowed, visible as faint blue luminescence, and the chamber began to resonate more intensely. Elena watched in awe as the initiate's body responded. At first subtle, increased heart rate, rhythmic breathing. Then more dramatic. His skin began to glow faintly, the same blue as the energy the Anunnaki directed. And his face, peaceful, then ecstatic, then something beyond, as if perceiving dimensions Elena couldn't see. 3 days and 3 nights, constant exposure to 432 Hz at maximum intensity. It works at the cellular level, at the genetic level. Dormant DNA activates. The pineal gland, calcified in most modern humans from fluoride and poor diet, decalcifies and activates. Consciousness expands beyond normal perception. Abilities emerge. Enhanced intuition, limited telepathy, accelerated healing, extended lifespan. Not supernatural, biological. Latent potential unlocked by precise frequency exposure. This is why they're not tombs, Elena whispered to herself, understanding finally clicking into place. This is why no mummies were ever found. Because nobody died here. They transformed here. Exactly. The being confirmed. And the initiate who emerged from this chamber became Pharaoh. Not because of divine bloodline, but because of divine activation. He could see what others couldn't see, know what others didn't know, heal what others couldn't heal. He ruled not by force, but by wisdom. Wisdom that came from expanded consciousness. This was the purpose. This was the truth. And your archaeologists, afraid of implications they don't understand, call it fantasy. Elena felt anger rising. 25 years of being told she was wrong when she had been right all along. But beneath the anger, vindication. And beneath that, wonder. Can it still work? Today? Even damaged? The projection began to dissolve, pulling her back toward the present. Yes, the being said. Come, I'll show you.
Elena's consciousness snapped back to her Cairo apartment like a rubber band released. She gasped, stumbled, caught herself on the desk. The being stood patiently, blue light still pulsing around it. I need to go there, Elena said immediately. To the pyramid, to the king's chamber, tonight, now. Yes, the being agreed. Your body needs to experience what your mind just understood, but not physical travel. That would take too long, and the guards would complicate matters. I'll project your consciousness again, but this time to the present-day chamber, and I'll create an energetic body for you. You'll feel everything as if physically present. Elena didn't hesitate. Do it. The being touched her forehead again. Different sensation this time. Not falling backward through time, but forward through space. Tunneling through Cairo's streets, through Giza's suburbs, across the plateau, through the pyramid's ancient stones. And then, she was there. The king's chamber. Empty of tourists, it was 3 a.m. local time, the pyramid officially closed, but Elena's energetic form stood inside, and it felt absolutely real. The slightly cool air, the rough stone beneath bare feet. Her energetic form was barefoot, dressed in simple linen like the ancient initiate, the oppressive sense of massive weight above, and the resonance. Even damaged, even with the casing stone stolen, even with the capstone missing, the chamber still vibrated at 432 Hz. Fainter than the ancient version, perhaps 20% of original intensity, as the being had said, but unmistakable, undeniable, real. Lie in the chamber, the being instructed, the granite sarcophagus, just as the initiate did. Elena approached it. The so-called sarcophagus, which she'd touched countless times during daylight research, now looked different. Not a failed tomb, but a precisely engineered frequency chamber. She climbed in, the granite cool against her back, and lay down. The moment she was fully positioned, everything changed. The 432 Hz frequency, which had been noticeable but bearable, suddenly intensified. Not because it got stronger, but because she was now positioned at the focal point, the exact center where all the chamber's acoustic properties converged. Every cell in her energetic body vibrated, not painful, but overwhelming, like being inside a massive bell while it rang, but the bell was her own body. Breathe, the being coached. 3 short breaths through your nose, 1 long exhale through your mouth. Synchronize with the frequency. Don't fight it. Let it work. Elena tried. In, out. In, out. And with each cycle, the vibration penetrated deeper. She felt it in her bones first, a strange tingling warmth, as if her skeleton were waking up after long sleep. Then her organs, heart rate slowing, becoming rhythmic, perfectly timed. Then deeper, cellular level, molecular level, places she shouldn't be able to feel but somehow did. And then the visions started. Not hallucinations, memories. She saw herself as the scribe in Thebes 3,200 years ago, copying ritual texts she didn't understand. The frustration was familiar, studying mysteries without comprehension, exactly like this lifetime. But then earlier, much earlier, she was an Anunnaki, not human, one of the golden-skinned teachers who'd come to Earth. She remembered, actually remembered, the decision to help humanity, to build activation structures, to leave knowledge encoded in stone for when the species was ready. And then earlier still. She was pure consciousness, no body at all, choosing to descend, to incarnate, to experience limitation for the purpose of growth. And she understood she'd been here dozens of times, hundreds maybe, each life building on the last, each one teaching something necessary. The energy rose through her chakras. She'd always dismissed chakras as New Age nonsense, but now she felt them physically, undeniably. Base of spine heating, warming and rising, solar plexus expanding, heart opening, overwhelming love, forgiveness, compassion flooding through her. For Diego who'd left, for colleagues who'd betrayed her, for academia that had rejected her. All of it dissolved in a wave of understanding. They were doing their best, operating from their level of awareness just like she was. Throat chakra opening. Suddenly she understood that speaking truth was her purpose, even when costly. Her 3 papers hadn't been career suicide. They'd been necessary preparation for this moment, for what came next. Third eye. The center of her forehead began to burn, not painfully, but intensely, as if something long dormant was waking up. And she saw Egypt as an energy network, every temple connected, every pyramid a node, the Nile flowing through it all like a circuit. And beyond Egypt, Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, Göbekli Tepe, dozens of ancient sites all over Earth, all connected, all part of a global activation system left by the Anunnaki. And finally, crown chakra. The top of her head felt like it was opening, dissolving, expanding outward. Elena lost sense of being Elena. She was consciousness itself, boundless, eternal, connected to everything. The separation she'd always felt, alone in Cairo, rejected by academia, divorced, isolated, all illusion. She was part of everything, always had been, always would be. And in that state, she understood the pyramids completely. They weren't built to activate a few elite pharaohs. They were built to activate humanity as a species when the time was right. And that time was now. The 432 Hz still functioned. Anyone sensitive enough, ready enough, could enter and experience activation. Not full transformation, that would require restoration, full power, but enough to begin, enough to wake up, enough to remember. The being's voice came through the expanded consciousness.
This is what your archaeologists deny. This is what your career was destroyed for suggesting, but you were right. You were always right. And now you know not just intellectually, but experientially. Your DNA is activating, your pineal gland is decalcifying, your consciousness is expanding. When you return to physical form, you'll be different. Abilities will emerge, vision will expand, and your mission will be clear. What mission? Elena asked, though she was beginning to understand. To document, to share, to guide others who feel the calling. You're a bridge, Elena, between academic knowledge and experiential truth, between ancient wisdom and modern understanding. The pyramids are awakening. The Anunnaki encoded them to wait until humanity was ready, and you, along with others around the world, are the first wave of reactivation. The intensity began to fade, the visions receding, consciousness condensing back into something resembling Elena Marquez, 47-year-old archaeologist. But not the same Elena, never the same again.
Elena opened her eyes in her Cairo apartment. The being stood exactly where it had been. Her desk clock showed 3:47 a.m. She'd been in projection for 47 minutes, though it felt simultaneously like hours and seconds. She stood shakily, legs unsteady, like returning from a long journey. She walked to the window, looked out at the Nile flowing dark under sparse streetlights. Everything looked sharper, colors more vivid even in darkness. She could see auras, faint colored fields around the few people still walking streets below. She'd never seen auras before, never believed in them honestly, but there they were, undeniable, real. "How do I verify this?" she asked, the scientist in her still needing proof despite overwhelming experience. "How do I know I'm not having a psychotic break, that this isn't elaborate delusion?" The being tilted its head. "Tomorrow, take your frequency analyzer to the king's chamber again, but this time, measure yourself before entering and after. Heart rate variability, brainwave patterns if you have EEG equipment, even basic biometrics. You'll see measurable changes. Your DNA is literally different now, not fully activated. That requires extended exposure, but beginning. Epigenetic markers have shifted. Gene expressions have changed. It's biology, Elena. Testable, measurable. Exactly what you've always demanded. Evidence." Elena nodded slowly. That she could do. That she could document. "And the others?" she asked. "You said I'm part of a first wave. Who else?" "Thousands globally. Some having experiences like yours, direct contact. Others simply feeling drawn to ancient sites without knowing why. Visiting Giza, Machu Picchu, Stonehenge, and having experiences they can't explain. Sudden tears, overwhelming emotions, spontaneous healing, unexplained visions. All evidence of activation beginning. The structures still function. Humanity is finally ready. And you, with your archaeological expertise, your scientific training, your public persecution for speaking truth, you're perfectly positioned to document, to legitimize, to guide." Elena felt the weight of it. 25 years of preparation, all leading here. "The papers I published," she said quietly, "the ones that destroyed my career, were they right?" Every word, the being confirmed. Pyramids as initiatory technology, Anunnaki connection, acoustic engineering for consciousness expansion, all correct. Academia rejected you because accepting your conclusions would require complete paradigm shift, rewriting textbooks, admitting centuries of error. That's not malice, just institutional inertia. But you planted seeds. Those papers are circulating underground, on alternative forums, among seekers. More academics than you know have read them privately, doubted publicly,
but wondered. You weren't writing for the present establishment. You were writing for the future. Elena felt tears, not of sadness, but of validation. 25 years of doubt, of questioning her sanity, of wondering if she'd thrown her life away for nothing. And now this impossible being confirming she'd been right all along. "What do I do now?" she asked, practically. "Tomorrow when sun rises, how do I proceed?" The being considered. First, care for yourself. The activation is demanding physically. Sleep. Eat well. Your body is undergoing real biological change and needs resources. Tomorrow, document. Take measurements. Journal the experience while memory is fresh. Then, begin sharing, not publicly yet, not dramatically. Start with your frequency analysis. Publish it on your website. The data is irrefutable. Those ready will recognize it. They'll reach out. A community will form naturally. "And you?" Elena asked. "Will you return?" "No need," the being said. "You have the knowledge now. Direct experience cannot be taken away. And when doubts arise, and they will, that's normal, you'll have measurable data to ground you. Plus, you're not alone. Others are being contacted. You'll find each other. Synchronicity isn't random. It's activated consciousness recognizing itself." The blue light began to intensify, pulsing faster. "Final thing," the being said. "Physical visit to Giza is important. Your consciousness has been there, but your physical body needs direct exposure. Go to the king's chamber. Lie in the granite chamber. Even brief exposure, 15-20 minutes, will deepen activation. Do this weekly if possible. The pyramid recognizes you now. The frequency will work more efficiently because your DNA is primed." "Can I bring others?" Elena asked suddenly. "Students? Seekers? People who want to experience this?" "Eventually, yes. But first, stabilize your own activation. Master it. Understand it. Then guide others. You wouldn't teach someone to swim by throwing them in the ocean. Gradual introduction, proper preparation. The Anunnaki knew this. That's why initiates underwent years of training before final activation. Respect the process." Elena nodded, understanding. Too much too fast could be destabilizing. She'd seen that in archaeological contexts. Artifacts removed too quickly from preservation conditions crumbled in air. Same principle, gradual transition, careful handling. The light enveloped the being completely now, form dissolving back into pure energy. "Remember, Elena," its voice came one final time, fainter, receding. "Pyramids are not monuments to death. They're manuals for life, for transformation, for remembering what humanity forgot. And you are one of the first in modern times to remember. Use that knowledge wisely, share it courageously, and trust that everything you lost, career, marriage, reputation, was clearing space for something far greater. Your real work begins now." And then it was gone. Elena stood alone in her apartment as dawn light began to purple the sky over Cairo. She walked to her desk, opened her laptop, and began to write.
Dr. Elena Marquez stood inside the king's chamber at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in February. She'd paid the standard tourist fee, but came early, before crowds, when the space was still relatively empty. She carried her frequency analyzer, officially for research purposes, approved by site management because she was known to them, even if academia had rejected her. But really, she came for the activation. Weekly visits for 3 months now, and the changes were undeniable. Week 1, mild headaches, which the being had warned were normal, pineal gland decalcifying. Improved sleep, despite the initial discomfort. dreams more vivid, often of Egypt in various historical periods. Journaled everything. Week 2. Headaches faded. Energy increased significantly. She needed only 6 hours sleep instead of 8. Appetite changed, suddenly craving foods she'd never liked: dates, honey, bitter greens. Her body intuiting what it needed. Week 4. First measurable change. Her optometrist, during a routine checkup, was confused. "Your vision improved? At 47? That doesn't happen. Usually vision degrades with age." But Elena's prescription had actually strengthened. She could see more clearly, both literally and metaphorically. Week 6. Abilities emerging. Walking through Qam el-Khalili market, she suddenly knew which vendor had genuine artifacts versus tourist replicas. Not from training, but from sensation, a tingling in her hands when near authentic objects. She tested it, 100% accuracy over 3 weeks of checking. Week 8. First synchronicity. Thinking about her research, needing confirmation on Tura limestone composition, and within an hour she received an email from a geologist she'd never met offering exactly that information. She hadn't posted about it, hadn't searched online that day, just thought about it, and the answer appeared. Week 10. Physical healing. A chronic shoulder injury from an excavation accident 5 years ago had limited her range of motion, caused daily pain. Gone. Completely. Not gradually. One morning she woke up and the pain simply wasn't there. Full range of motion restored. Her physiotherapist had no explanation. Week 12. Now. Telepathy emerging. Not full-blown conversation, but catching thoughts from people nearby. In crowded spaces, it was overwhelming. She'd learned to shield, to filter, but with practice, incredibly useful. She knew when colleagues were lying, when vendors were overcharging, when someone approaching needed help versus wanted to scam tourists. She lay in the granite chamber now, letting the 432 hertz work through her. 20 minutes, eyes closed, breathing synchronized. And she felt it. DNA strands activating that had been dormant. Not metaphor, actual physical sensation at cellular level, like lights turning on in a dark house, room by room. When she emerged, she checked her notes. Progress tracking. Because she was documenting everything. Daily journals, biomarker data, frequency measurements, building a case. Scientific, irrefutable. Her website had attracted attention, not mainstream media, they ignored it as expected, but alternative researchers, independent scientists, spiritual seekers. She'd received 200 emails over 3 months. Some dismissed her as crazy, but others, perhaps 30% of respondents, shared their own experiences. Spontaneous activation, unexplained abilities, visits to ancient sites that changed them fundamentally. And a core group of 12 had formed. They called themselves the Giza Collective. Informal, nothing official, just people committed to exploring pyramid technology scientifically and experientially. They met monthly in Cairo, sharing research, comparing notes, experimenting with frequencies, meditation techniques, group activations. Among them, a sound engineer from Germany measuring binaural beats at various pyramid locations, a biologist from India tracking telomere lengthening in activated individuals. Preliminary data suggested slowed aging. A physicist from Brazil building scale models of pyramids, testing resonance properties. Legitimate scientists risking reputations because the data was too compelling to ignore. Elena descended from the king's chamber, emerging into early morning sunlight. Giza was quiet still, peaceful before the tour bus invasion. She looked up at the Great Pyramid, its weathered limestone blocks golden in dawn light, missing its casing stones, missing its capstone, damaged by 12,800 years of human forgetfulness. But still functioning, still waiting, still calling to those ready to remember. Her phone buzzed. Email notification. Subject: former colleague reaching out. From Dr. Hassan Osman, Egyptian Museum, her old friend from university days who'd stopped speaking to her after the third paper. She opened it, heart pounding. Elena, I don't know how to say this. For 4 years, I've been trying to rationalize, dismiss, forget your research, but I can't. Last week, I visited Giza with equipment similar to yours. I measured the 432 hertz. It's real. Everything you said is real. I'm ready to listen. Can we meet? Hassan. Elena smiled, tears in her eyes. The pyramids were waking up, and humanity was beginning to remember.
3 months after her first activation, Elena stood in her Cairo apartment on a Wednesday evening, laptop open on her desk, Zoom call connecting. 12 faces appeared on screen, the Giza Collective's monthly meeting. Dr. Hassan Osman from the Egyptian Museum, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a sound engineer from Osaka, who'd measured frequencies at the Great Pyramid and found identical 432 Hz readings. Professor Maria Santos from Sao Paulo, a molecular biologist tracking epigenetic changes in activated individuals. James Chen, a physicist from Singapore building scale pyramid models. And 8 others, archaeologists, independent researchers, spiritual seekers who'd all experienced something unexplainable at ancient sites and were now committed to understanding it scientifically. Elena, your biometric data from last week, Yuki said, pulling up a graph. Heart rate variability increased 340% during your King's Chamber session. That's not meditation. That's measurable physiological transformation. Maria chimed in, excitement in her voice. And I have preliminary results from the telomere analysis. 3 participants who've done weekly pyramid activations for 8 weeks, all showing telomere lengthening. That's cellular age reversal. Statistically significant. This is Nobel Prize territory if we can get proper funding and peer review. We won't get peer review, Hassan said, his tone resigned but not defeated. I tried submitting to the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology, rejected without review. They didn't even read it, saw activation chamber in the abstract and dismissed it as pseudoscience. Elena nodded, understanding completely. She'd lived that rejection for 4 years. So we publish independently, build our own credibility through data, through replication. The evidence speaks for itself. Eventually, even academia can't ignore thousands of documented cases. James shared his screen, showing CAD models of pyramid structures. I've been experimenting with ratios. The golden ratio appears 47 times in the Great Pyramid's design. Not coincidence. When I build models using these exact proportions, even at 100th scale, they generate measurable electromagnetic fields. Weak, but present. The Anunnaki understood sacred geometry at a level we're only beginning to grasp. Which brings me to my discovery, Elena said, pulling up her own presentation. Satellite imagery of Egypt, but with overlay data, colored lines connecting various sites. I've been analyzing the geographic positions of major temples along the Nile. They're not random. They form a precise geometric pattern, essentially a giant circuit board. Each temple is a node, the Nile is the conductor, and the pyramids at Giza are the central processor. She zoomed in, showing measurements. The distance between Karnak and Luxor temples is exactly 1.618 times the distance between Luxor and Edfu, golden ratio again. And the angle formed by connecting Giza, Saqqara, and Dashur pyramids is 51.84 degrees, the exact angle of the Great Pyramid's slope. This wasn't separate construction projects. This was a unified system, engineered as one massive technology. And it extends beyond Egypt, added Dr. Rafael Mendoza, an archaeologist from Peru attending from Cusco. I've measured the same 432 Hz frequency at Sacsayhuaman in Peru. Same precision stonework,
same impossible engineering, same acoustic properties. And when I mapped the locations of major Incan sites, they formed geometric patterns identical to Egypt's layout. Different continents, same architects. The implications settled over the group like a weight. The Anunnaki, Elena said quietly, didn't just build Egypt. They built a global activation network. Every continent has these sites. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, 11,000 years old, predates Egyptian dynastic period by 6,000 years. Stonehenge, the Bosnian pyramids, Nan Madol in Micronesia, all aligned to celestial positions, all built with megalithic precision impossible for the supposed era, all resonating at healing frequencies. Which raises the question, Yuki said, why? Why build a global network? What were they preparing for? Elena took a breath, knowing this next part would sound incredible even to this group of open-minded researchers. The Gray who contacted me, he said the Anunnaki knew they would eventually leave Earth. Their project here had a timeline, but they also knew humanity would go through what he called the forgetting, millennia of spiritual amnesia, of treating these structures as tombs and monuments instead of technology. So they built them to be permanent, to wait, to function even at minimal capacity until humanity reached a critical threshold of collective consciousness where we could remember safely. And we've reached that threshold? Hassan asked. We're reaching it now, Elena replied. Look at us. 12 people from 6 continents, different backgrounds, different specialties, all arriving at the same conclusions independently. That's not coincidence. That's activation spreading. Each person who experiences it becomes a signal, a beacon. Others who are ready feel the resonance and are drawn in. Maria nodded vigorously. I've documented this. I call it activation cascade. When one person in a social network undergoes genuine activation, within 6 months, an average of 3.7 others in their immediate circle begin reporting similar experiences. Spontaneous awakenings, unexplained abilities, sudden interest in ancient sites. It spreads like a frequency matching, not a virus. Resonance, not infection. Which explains the timing, James said. For 12,800 years, these structures sat dormant, visited by millions, but only causing activation in rare individuals. Now suddenly, hundreds, maybe thousands globally reporting experiences. The collective consciousness reached critical mass. The network came online.
Elena felt chills. She'd intuited this, but hearing it articulated scientifically made it undeniable. So what's our responsibility? Asked Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, a Nigerian anthropologist studying indigenous activation practices. If we're the first wave, what do we do with this knowledge? The group fell silent, the weight of the question settling. Elena spoke first. We document, rigorously. We gather data that's irrefutable. Biometrics, frequency measurements, archaeological evidence, testimonials from credible sources. We build a body of evidence so comprehensive that dismissing it becomes harder than accepting it. And we guide, Hassan added. People are going to start experiencing activation spontaneously, without context, without understanding. They'll think they're going crazy. We need to be there, websites, forums, support groups, to tell them, no, you're not crazy. This is real. Here's what's happening. Here's how to navigate it. And we prepare for resistance, Yuki said darkly. Academia will fight this. Religious institutions will fight this. Any power structure dependent on keeping humanity unconscious will fight this. We need to be ready for that. Elena agreed. Which is why we publish everything openly. No secrets, no gatekeeping. The Anunnaki made that mistake, restricting activation to an elite few. It created hierarchies, power imbalances, eventually corruption. This time, the knowledge has to be democratized. Anyone who's ready should have access. Even those who might misuse it? Raphael asked carefully. The structures themselves filter, Maria replied. That's what my research shows.
The frequencies only activate those at a certain consciousness level. If someone approaches with ego, with desire for power over others, the activation doesn't occur, or it occurs partially and causes discomfort, headaches, nausea, psychological distress. The pyramid recognizes intent. It's built-in protection. Like Jesus said, Hassan murmured, and Elena looked at him surprised. Hassan was Muslim, not Christian. He smiled slightly. Even we acknowledge Isa as a prophet, and he taught, "Cast not pearls before swine." Not elitism, but recognition that certain knowledge requires preparation. The pyramids enforce that automatically. The meeting continued another hour, sharing research updates, planning coordinated experiments, discussing outreach strategies. But when they finally logged off, Elena sat in the growing darkness of her apartment, feeling the enormity of what they were documenting. Humanity wasn't just discovering ancient technology, humanity was remembering itself. The Anunnaki didn't leave instruction manuals in the pyramids. They built the instruction manual as the pyramids. Every measurement, every angle, every acoustic property was information encoded in stone. And now, 12,800 years later, humans were finally learning to read. Her phone buzzed. Email notification. Subject: Urgent. Anomaly at Giza. From site security contact she'd cultivated over the years. She opened it, heart accelerating. Dr. Marquez, something strange tonight. Multiple tourists reporting identical experiences in King's Chamber over the last week. Spontaneous crying, overwhelming emotions, several claiming to see beings of light. Management is worried about liability. They're considering closing the chamber for structural assessment. Thought you should know. Her hands trembled slightly. It was happening. The activation cascade Maria had documented. The frequency intensifying as more people awakened, creating a feedback loop. The pyramids weren't waiting anymore. They were actively calling, and those with DNA ready to respond were answering in increasing numbers, whether they understood what was happening or not. She composed a quick reply to the collective group chat. Emergency meeting tomorrow. The acceleration is beginning. Then she stood, walked to her window, looked north toward Giza. Even from here, 15 kilometers away, she swore she could feel it. A pulse, a frequency, a call that had been broadcasting for millennia, but was only now being heard by ears finely tuned to the right station. The gray had told her, "You're the first wave." Looking at the emails flooding her inbox, people from Australia, Canada, Brazil, Japan, all reporting similar experiences at ancient sites, all asking for guidance, all sensing something was happening but not knowing what. Elena understood. The first wave wasn't a few dozen researchers. It was thousands, maybe tens of thousands, all waking up simultaneously across the planet. The Anunnaki's plan was unfolding exactly as designed, and Elena, the archaeologist who'd lost everything for speaking truth, was standing at the epicenter, watching humanity remember what it had spent 12,800 years forgetting. She picked up her journal, opened to a fresh page, and wrote, Day 94 since first contact. The activation is no longer isolated incidents. It's becoming collective. The pyramids are functioning at increasing capacity, not because they've changed, but because we have. Enough humans reached the threshold, the network came online, and now it's amplifying, accelerating, cascading through the collective consciousness like ripples becoming waves, becoming tsunami. We're not discovering ancient technology, we're remembering we are the technology. The pyramids are just mirrors showing us what we've always been, but forgot how to see. The Anunnaki aren't returning to activate us, we're activating ourselves, using the tools they left, exactly as they planned. And I'm terrified and exhilarated in equal measure, because I have no idea what comes next. But I know one thing with absolute certainty. Humanity will never be the same. She closed the journal, saved her collective notes, and prepared for tomorrow's emergency meeting. Because the future wasn't coming. It was already here. And it looked exactly like the ancient past. The pyramids alive, the frequencies broadcasting, and humans finally remembering how to listen.
Elena's story reveals something that archaeology has been hiding for centuries, something that would fundamentally transform how you understand human history and human potential. Pyramids are not tombs. They never were. No pharaoh's mummy has ever been found in the Great Pyramid. No burial inscriptions, no funerary objects. Because the pyramids weren't built for death. They were built for transformation. The Anunnaki, advanced beings your textbooks dismiss as mythology, engineered these structures 12,800 years ago as DNA activation chambers. Every measurement, every angle, every material choice was intentional. The Tura limestone casing amplified electromagnetic frequencies. The gold capstone completed an energy circuit. The entire structure resonated at 432 Hz, the healing frequency that ancient civilizations engineered into stone. And it still works. Even damaged, even with 80% of functionality lost, the King's Chamber still vibrates at 432 Hz. You can measure it. Elena did. Hundreds of independent researchers have. The data is public, available, irrefutable. But academia won't touch it. Because accepting this truth requires admitting that ancient civilizations had capabilities we've lost, that human history is far older than textbooks claim, that beings from elsewhere helped shape our development, that your DNA contains dormant potential waiting to activate. Elena lost everything for speaking this truth. Career, marriage, reputation, financial security. At 47, blacklisted by every major university, surviving on freelance work in Cairo. But she gained something far more valuable, direct experience of what the pyramids actually do, undeniable activation of abilities she didn't know she possessed, and the knowledge that everything she'd intuited was absolutely correct. And here's what matters most. You don't need to be an archaeologist to experience this. The pyramids were built for humanity, for you, not for an elite few. The 432 Hz frequency doesn't discriminate. It activates anyone who's ready, anyone whose DNA recognizes the call. You don't even need to go to Egypt. These activation sites exist globally. Machu Picchu, Stonehenge, Göbekli Tepe, dozens scattered across every continent. The Anunnaki built a worldwide network. But more importantly, the real pyramid is within you. Your body is the structure. Your DNA is the technology. Your consciousness is the chamber where transformation happens. If Elena's story resonates with you, if you visited ancient sites and experienced unexplainable reactions, sudden tears, overwhelming emotion, spontaneous healing, then you're feeling the activation beginning. Your cellular memory remembers, and now is the time to remember fully. Subscribe to Stories of Light and activate the bell, because Elena's story isn't unique. Thousands globally are experiencing similar activations. The Anunnaki built these structures to wait until humanity was ready. That time is now. Leave a comment. Have you visited Egypt or other ancient sites? What did you feel? Do you believe pyramids were tombs or something more? If you want to support this channel, become a member or leave a thanks badge. Each contribution allows us to continue revealing truths that mainstream academia refuses to acknowledge. Remember, pyramids aren't dead monuments. They're living technology, still functioning, still broadcasting their frequency, still waiting for humans to recognize them as activation tools. Elena answered the call. She lost everything and gained everything. She chose truth over comfort. The pyramids are waiting. Your DNA is waiting. The truth is waiting. Will you answer the call?